Welcome to the Dr. Wyatt Show, where developing a long-lasting, happy relationship is the status symbol to achieve, and following my 6 marriage steps is a path to help get you there. I'm your host, Dr. Wyatt Fisher, a licensed psychologist specializing in marriage counseling. The Dr. Wyatt Show is listener-supported, so to help keep it on the air so couples worldwide can receive hope for their marriage, please consider becoming a monthly supporter by going to patreon.com/Dr. Wyatt Show. As a reminder, you can call me Monday through Thursday from 4:30 to 6 Mountain Standard Time at 720-307-7347, and I'll answer your marriage questions. So be sure to give me a call and tell your family and friends. And those questions and answers are going to become a part of the Dr. Wyatt Show podcast. And on that note, I got a call this last week, so I'm going to play the message, the recording of me and this person talking, and it's an intro into the topic today. And the topic today is 4 steps to managing old wounds. Okay, we're ready. Welcome to the Dr. Wyatt Show podcast. What can I do for you?
So my question is, my wife has this uncanny ability to never forget situations that we maybe got into a disagreement, or I said something that, kind of frustrated her or something, and she'll never forget like a disagreement that we may have had like years and years ago, and she'll occasionally bring something up. Like today, for instance, she brought up an argument that we had probably like 2 years ago, and it just kind of like upset her, and so I don't know if I'm just curious if that's like normal, or if there's something that I could do to help defray when old disagreements are brought up, or what to do when old stuff is brought up, I guess. Because my wife has a very good ability at remembering stuff for years and years and years, especially stuff that kind of frustrated her in the past.
Sure. Yeah, I would say 2 things to that. I mean, the first thing is if your partner is bringing up stuff from the past, there's a good chance that she hasn't healed from it yet, that there's still resentment around that original conflict or that original behavior that hurt her or upset her. And so when that's the case, usually it requires working through that resentment thoroughly, even if it happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And that's where I recommend couples using the Reunite tool. Are you familiar with the Reunite tool already or not?
No.
So the Reunite tool, you can Google it, just Google Reunite tool, and there's an article there that explains it. And basically it provides a format for how to talk through complaints and hurt feelings and resentments in a way that keeps it emotionally safe for both partners. And so you can read through that and give it your best. And ideally, your wife would read through it also, and you guys could use that as like your guide to talk through those hurtful areas. But again, most of the time, when someone won't let go of stuff from the past, it's because they still have resentment around it. And the resentment needs to be processed through properly, and the Reunite tool can facilitate that. Another time, wherein someone will bring up stuff from the past is maybe they have healed from the past wound, but the current behavior is reminding them of it, so they're getting triggered in the moment. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they still hold resentment from the past, but the current behavior is just triggering that past. And so that also could be occurring. So that might be a discussion to have with your wife if you haven't already, is just ask her, like, I notice that when we had that conflict, you brought up that thing that happened in the past. Is that still something that you resent? Is that still a wound that we need to talk further through? And if she says yes, then you could pivot over and use the Reunite tool for both of you.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'll definitely look up the Reunite tool as soon as I get home.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice because, we're not trained on how to talk through hard stuff. So most of us, when there's a hurtful behavior or an offense, we just kind of sweep it under the rug or we blow up. And because of that, usually it's not handled properly. And so it can get stuck in the person's heart. And so that's why going back and circling through using something like the Reunite tool can really be therapeutic.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Yeah, I'll definitely give it a shot.
Okay, let me know if you have any questions.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right.
So that's a common question right there. And that's why I thought I would do this whole podcast episode today on how do you manage old wounds. So the first thing to consider is discern if there are old wounds. And the number one way you know if there are old wounds is if you're married to someone who brings up things you've done in the past. If you have conflicts, you have tension, and they bring up things you did a year ago or 5 years ago or 20 years ago, most likely that's an old wound that needs to be tended to. So we need to think about this. And maybe you have old wounds. Maybe your partner has done something to you that you haven't let go of because it hasn't ever been properly dealt with, and so you just buried it. And so every time there's a conflict, it comes up to your mind or it comes out of your mouth. You bring it back up. And again, most likely because it was never dealt with properly in the first place. So that's step number one. You want to discern if there's old wounds in your marriage. Second thing is don't avoid them. Discuss them. So often when we've done something in our marriage that's hurt our partner or we've gone through a difficult season, a lot of us want to avoid that topic. Maybe it's because every time we talk about it, we have a conflict and we don't want to have conflict, so we avoid the topic. Or maybe you have some shame around what you've done, or every time you talk about it, you feel criticized, so you don't want to go there. But the more you avoid, the more it keeps you captive to the past. You need to be able to go there and thoroughly talk about it and process through it so that it can officially go downstream. And vice versa. If something has happened in your relationship where maybe you had hurtful behavior or your partner had hurtful behavior and then you avoid the topic, it's going to latch on and not let go. And that's why it keeps getting brought up. And so I see this a lot with couples in my practice where they don't want to talk about the hard stuff. When I tell them we have to talk about resentments and go through that, sometimes they'll say, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go back to those resentments. And that's the wrong thing to do, because the more you avoid, the more it's going to hold your marriage captive, because it's hard to move forward unless you have a cathartic release and process around the resentment of what happened. So don't avoid those topics. Instead, you need to discuss them. Now, number 3 is how you discuss them. And like I mentioned to the gentleman on the phone call, I highly recommend using the Reunite tool. The Reunite tool, you can access it in multiple ways. You can access it through searching for Reunite tool, and you'll see the article on my blog called Conflict Resolution in Marriage Reunite Tool. That article is great because it explains the Reunite tool. It provides a graph at the bottom of the Reunite tool to use to make sure you both are staying on the same page. Another way to access it is go to my website and under Marriage Tools, you can purchase the Marriage Tool Reunite tool, and that's me doing a video of demonstrating the tool, role-playing it, explaining it, so that's another way to access it. It's also in my book, so if you've purchased my book already, Total Marriage Refresh on Amazon, it's in chapter 4, the Reunite tool. So there's several ways to access it, but the Reunite tool is so helpful because if you're the one that's been hurt, it provides a format on how to talk about the hurt in a way that disarms your partner. And there's an art and a science to that. Because usually when we talk about what our partner has done that's hurt us or offended us or upset us, they feel attacked, and then they give us the opposite of what we want. Instead of them taking ownership, and instead of them empathizing, instead of them apologizing, instead of them making amends, what do? They get defensive because they feel attacked. And then we feel even more upset because we don't get any sympathy or healing from that conversation. It makes it worse. And that's why a lot of couples avoid. So using the Reunite tool allows you and it trains you on how to express your hurt and your complaint in a way that's going to disarm your partner instead of offend your partner. And if you're the one listening, it provides concrete steps on how to respond back so there's healing. Those kind of conversations are pivotal for any kind of hurtful pattern of behavior or a hurtful event that occurred in your relationship. You're not going to get over it unless you have a very healing conversation. And that conversation ends with, what do we do different moving forward? As you've heard me say, the best way to say sorry is changed behavior. Now, the Reunite tool It's hard to do because it's not natural. So you can try your best, read through it with your partner. I encourage couples to draw it up on a board, put it on your phone, take a picture of the graph so that you both are looking at it at the same time to stay on point. Most couples need some training around it. If you find yourself not able to follow it, feel free to contact me and we can set up a few counseling sessions so I can personally train you on it. And then you'll become very competent at it so you can do it on your own. The fourth thing that you need to do is manage triggers. So even if you've talked through old wounds, even if you've been very supportive emotionally around old wounds, even if that old pattern of behavior that was hurtful is no longer there because you've made changes or your partner has made changes, once in a while, you still may get triggered. And a trigger is when your partner does something that reminds you of that hurtful behavior they used to do. So when that happens, it's important for you, if you're the one who got triggered, to recognize you're getting triggered and to be able to put into words, I'm getting triggered. And that means you need to take a break away from your partner to de-flood. And then you come back and you explain the trigger. Once you're relaxed and you say, hey, you know what? That behavior that just happened, I know you weren't meaning it like this, but it reminded me of that pattern that we used to have in our marriage. And so it triggered me and I got flooded. Then if you're the recipient, if you're the one listening to that trigger, the way you manage your partner's trigger is you become supportive. You become empathetic. You put yourself in their shoes and you say something like, makes sense, that would have triggered you. And again, I'm so sorry for that pattern of behavior I used to have. So every trigger then becomes an opportunity for healing. Because sometimes, again, even if you go through that old pain and you process through it properly, it still may get triggered once in a while in the present. So when it gets triggered, you have to manage those triggers properly and sensitively because it's an added layer of healing for the memory of what used to occur. So those are the 4 steps to managing old wounds. Number 1, discern if there's old wounds. Number 2, don't avoid them, discuss them. Number 3, use the reunite tool when you discuss them. And number 4, you want to manage triggers effectively. Thank you for listening to the Dr. Wyatt Show. If you enjoyed the episode, click the 5 stars and leave a review. And remember, I am recruiting right now for couples who want to lead my Total Marriage Refresh seminar and provide follow-up relationship coaching after the seminar. I will train you, I will pay you, and I will supervise you. If you are interested, the next cohort to go through my training program starts mid-June. So I'm actively signing up people right now. So contact me if you are interested in learning more about the program. You can email me at info@drwyattfisher.com. And remember, your marriage is alive. So if you care for it and nurture it and tend to it, it will grow. But if you neglect it and deprive it, it can wilt and die. The choice is up to you.